Nobody expected this press conference to explode the way it did. Not after another hard-fought match. Not after Brazil finally seemed to be finding some rhythm under new manager Carlo Ancelotti. And definitely not because of one single question. But the moment reporters brought up Raphinha, everything changed. The room went quiet. Ancelotti's expression changed instantly. And what happened next has fans all over social media convinced that something is seriously wrong behind the scenes. Because according to multiple reports, Raphinha is once again dealing with an injury setback at the worst possible moment. A player who was supposed to become one of the pillars of Brazil's new era. A player Ancelotti reportedly viewed as essential to his attacking plans. A player the manager simply cannot afford to lose. But here's where things get interesting. Instead of delivering the usual calm, diplomatic answer that managers give when discussing injuries, Ancelotti appeared visibly frustrated. And one particular quote is now spreading everywhere. "I can't count on him." 4 words. That's all it took. 4 words that immediately sparked panic among Brazilian fans. Was Ancelotti frustrated with the injury itself? Was he worried about Raphinha's fitness? Or was there something much bigger happening behind closed doors that nobody knows about yet? Because sources close to the national team are now raising questions about Brazil's preparations, squad depth, and whether Ancelotti is beginning to lose patience with key players becoming unavailable at critical moments. And if that's true, the implications could be massive. Especially with major international fixtures approaching fast. Now fans are demanding answers. The media is digging for more information. And Brazil's newest controversy may be just getting started. Because what Ancelotti said next only made the entire situation even more explosive. For years, Brazil has been blessed with an endless production line of attacking talent. From Pelé to Ronaldo, Ronaldinho to Neymar, every generation has seemed to produce another superstar capable of carrying the weight of one of football's most demanding shirts. But in recent years, that tradition has faced growing pressure. The national team has struggled to find consistency, major tournament disappointments have piled up, and fans have become increasingly impatient for a return to dominance on the world stage. That is exactly why the arrival of Carlo Ancelotti generated so much excitement. When the legendary Italian manager accepted the challenge of leading Brazil, expectations immediately skyrocketed. This wasn't just another coaching appointment. This was one of the most successful managers in football history taking charge of the most successful national team in football history. Supporters believed Ancelotti would bring stability, discipline, and a winning mentality back to a squad overflowing with talent. Among the players expected to thrive under Ancelotti's leadership was Raphinha. The explosive winger had established himself as one of Brazil's most dangerous attacking weapons. His pace, creativity, direct running, and ability to score from seemingly impossible situations made him a vital piece of the national team's plans. Whether operating on the wing or drifting into central areas, Raphinha possessed the kind of unpredictability that defenders hate facing. More importantly, he had become one of the few players capable of changing a game with a single moment of brilliance. That made him invaluable. As Brazil prepared for a new chapter under Ancelotti, many analysts predicted that Raphinha would become one of the manager's most trusted players. His work rate fit perfectly with Ancelotti's tactical philosophy, and his experience at the highest levels of club football meant he could handle the pressure that comes with representing Brazil. Everything seemed to be falling into place. The squad was beginning to adapt to Ancelotti's ideas. Results were improving. Confidence was growing. And fans finally felt there was a clear direction after years of uncertainty. But football has a cruel habit of changing everything in an instant. Just when momentum appears to be building, injuries can destroy months of planning. Managers spend countless hours designing systems around key players, only to see those plans collapse because of one unfortunate setback. That is the nightmare Brazil may now be facing. Reports surrounding Raphinha's latest injury concerns have sent shockwaves through the football world. What initially appeared to be a manageable issue has quickly evolved into a major talking point. Questions are now being asked about his availability, his recovery timeline, and most importantly, how much Brazil will suffer if he is forced to spend significant time on the sidelines. For Ancelotti, the timing could not be worse. And judging by his recent comments, frustration may already be starting to boil over behind the scenes. Because what happens next could have a massive impact on Brazil. The real controversy didn't begin when reports of Raphinha's injury surfaced. Injuries happen every season. Players get hurt. Managers adjust. Teams move on. What transformed the situation into a full-blown crisis was the growing belief that Ancelotti's frustration wasn't simply about losing a talented player. It was about losing a player he had built part of his system around. As news of the setback spread, Brazilian media immediately started asking difficult questions. How serious was the injury? Would Raphinha miss upcoming matches? Was there a chance he could return sooner than expected? And most importantly, how would Brazil replace him if he couldn't play? Those questions quickly found their way into Ancelotti's press conference. At first, the veteran manager appeared calm. He answered routine questions. He discussed tactics. He spoke about the team's progress. But the atmosphere shifted the moment reporters brought up Raphinha. Suddenly, the relaxed mood disappeared. Ancelotti's answers became noticeably shorter. His body language changed. And fans watching closely began to notice something unusual. This wasn't the expression of a manager mildly disappointed by an injury update. This looked like genuine frustration. The reason became clearer as more details emerged. According to reports, Raphinha had become one of the central figures in Ancelotti's long-term plans for Brazil. The winger wasn't simply another attacking option sitting somewhere on the depth chart. He was expected to be one of the leaders of a new generation. One of the players capable of carrying responsibility in the biggest matches. One of the few attackers trusted to execute Ancelotti's tactical instructions under pressure. Losing that kind of player isn't just a personnel problem. It's a structural problem. Every coach has players they trust more than others. Players who understand the system. Players who can translate ideas from the training ground into results on the field. For Ancelotti, many insiders believed Raphinha had become one of those players. That's why his injury created such a difficult situation. Brazil suddenly found itself facing an uncomfortable reality. The squad looked deep on paper. But replacing a player like Raphinha isn't as easy as plugging another name into the lineup. His speed changes defensive structures. His movement creates space for teammates. His ability to attack defenders one-on-one forces opponents to adjust their entire game plan. Those qualities aren't easy to replicate. And that's where the first major twist arrived. Instead of discussing possible replacements, much of the media attention suddenly shifted toward Ancelotti himself.
Why?
Because fans started debating whether his comments revealed a much bigger concern. Many interpreted his reaction as a sign that he doesn't fully trust the alternatives available to him. That theory spread rapidly. If Ancelotti truly believed Brazil had enough depth, why did he appear so frustrated? Why did his comments sound less like temporary disappointment and more like long-term concern? Those questions exploded across social media. Supporters began arguing over which players should step up. Former players weighed in with their opinions. Football analysts debated whether Brazil's attacking depth was being overrated. And suddenly, what started as an injury story became a conversation about the entire national team's future. Then came another development. Reports suggested that Ancelotti had already been working extensively with tactical setups specifically designed around Raphinha's strengths. That revelation changed everything. Now the injury wasn't merely removing a player from the lineup. It was potentially forcing the manager to rethink months of preparation. Training sessions. Tactical experiments. Attacking combinations. Everything might need adjustments. And that is where frustration naturally begins to grow. Managers can accept losing a player. What they hate is losing a player after building plans around him. Especially when crucial matches are approaching. The pressure becomes even greater when you're coaching Brazil. Every decision is analyzed. Every lineup choice is questioned. Every result becomes a national debate. Ancelotti knew that better than anyone. Which brings us to the biggest twist of all. As discussions about Raphinha's condition intensified, some observers began suggesting that the injury crisis might actually expose a deeper weakness within Brazil's squad. For years, people have praised Brazil's incredible attacking talent. But critics argued that the team remains heavily dependent on a small group of elite creators. If one or two key players disappear, the entire attacking structure can suddenly look very different. That possibility is exactly what has fans worried. Because if Brazil struggles without Raphinha, It raises uncomfortable questions about whether the squad is truly as complete as everyone believed. And judging by Ancelotti's reaction, those same questions may already be keeping him awake at night. The injury itself was bad enough, but the possibility that it could reveal much bigger problems inside Brazil's project? That's the twist nobody saw coming. If the story had players get hurt, teams adapt, football never stops. But this situation was about to become far more complicated. Because as journalists continued digging into Ancelotti's comments and Brazil's preparations, a troubling picture started to emerge. The concern wasn't simply that Raphinha might miss matches. The concern was that Brazil appeared far more dependent on him than anyone wanted to admit. And that's where the real panic began. For months, supporters had been hearing the same narrative. Brazil was loaded with talent. Brazil had unmatched attacking depth. Brazil could replace any player in the world and still compete with anyone. But when analysts started examining the squad more closely, they noticed something uncomfortable. Many of Brazil's attackers bring talent. Few bring what Raphinha brings. That's a massive difference. There are players who can score goals. There are players who can dribble. There are players who can create chances. But very few combine all of those qualities while also working relentlessly without the ball. Raphinha had become one of the rare players capable of doing everything Ancelotti demanded. That realization started spreading quickly. Suddenly, discussions shifted from injury updates to a much larger question. What happens if Brazil cannot rely on him consistently? The debate exploded across television panels, podcasts, and social media. Some fans argued that Brazil's depth would be enough. Others weren't convinced. And then another development pushed the situation into an entirely different category. Reports began suggesting that Raphinha's latest setback wasn't being viewed as an isolated incident. Instead, some observers started looking at a broader pattern. Availability, fitness concerns, recovery timelines, recurring physical issues. Whether fair or not, the conversation was no longer about one injury. People were beginning to wonder whether Brazil could truly build its future around a player who might not always be available when it matters most. That question carries enormous consequences. Because Ancelotti isn't preparing for one match. He's preparing for major tournaments. He's preparing for knockout football. He's preparing for moments where one absence can destroy an entire campaign. And according to several analysts, that's exactly why his reaction appeared so emotional. Not because he doubted Raphinha's talent, but because talent means very little if it isn't consistently available. Then came the shocking reveal that completely changed how many fans viewed the situation. Sources close to Brazil's preparation reportedly indicated that Ancelotti had been experimenting with multiple attacking structures specifically centered around Raphinha's role. That detail immediately caught attention, because it suggested the manager wasn't treating Raphinha as merely one important player among many. He was treating him as a cornerstone, a foundation piece, a player whose presence influenced everyone else's responsibilities. Think about that for a moment. If one player's absence forces an entire tactical redesign, that player is doing far more than filling a position. He's helping define the identity of the team. And suddenly Brazil's injury problem looked much bigger than originally believed. Because now the question wasn't, who replaces Raphinha? The question became, can Brazil still play the same way without him? Those are completely different problems. Finding a replacement is difficult. Changing an entire football identity is much harder. The pressure on Ancelotti intensified immediately. Every reporter wanted answers. Every supporter wanted reassurance. Every analyst wanted clarity. Yet the more people searched for certainty, the more uncertainty seemed to appear. Then came another twist. Former players began weighing in on the debate. Several pointed out that Brazil has faced similar situations before. Talented generations often become overly reliant on one or two stars. When those stars are healthy, everything works. When they're unavailable, weaknesses suddenly become visible. That warning struck a nerve with supporters, because many remembered previous tournaments where injuries completely altered Brazil's trajectory. Nobody wanted history to repeat itself, especially under a manager brought in specifically to prevent those kinds of collapses. Meanwhile, pressure continued building around Ancelotti himself. Some critics argued he should already have alternative systems prepared. Others defended him, saying no coach can easily replace a player with Raphinha's unique skill set. The debate became increasingly intense. And through it all, one fact remained impossible to ignore. Brazil looked different without him. Whether supporters wanted to admit it or not, the team simply wasn't the same. That reality created a growing sense of urgency. If Raphinha missed significant time, somebody would need to step forward. A new leader would need to emerge. A new attacking focal point would need to be found. And there were no guarantees that would happen smoothly. Then came perhaps the most surprising revelation of all. Behind the scenes, early in his tenure. Alternative formations. Different attacking partnerships. New roles for existing players. Contingency plans that were originally meant for emergencies. The fact those discussions were reportedly happening at all shocked many observers. Because it suggested the coaching staff viewed the situation as serious enough to warrant immediate action. That's when fans realized this wasn't just media speculation anymore. This was a genuine football problem. A problem affecting planning. A problem affecting strategy. A problem affecting Brazil's future. And perhaps most importantly, a problem affecting Ancelotti's confidence in the project he was trying to build. The injury may have started the story. But it was the growing realization of how much Brazil depended on Raphinha that truly sent shockwaves through the football world. And if Ancelotti's frustration was already visible now, many are wondering what happens if another setback arrives. Because one injury can be managed. 2 injuries can be survived. But if Brazil's biggest stars keep disappearing at the worst possible moments, even one of the greatest managers in football history may find himself facing a challenge bigger than anyone expected. The news spread like wildfire across social media within minutes, and by the time evening training sessions were underway, the entire football world was already reacting in real time. Fans, analysts, former players, and even rival clubs couldn't ignore what had happened. The atmosphere was chaotic, almost unreal, as if the sport itself had been shaken by something bigger than just an injury update. On X, formerly Twitter, reactions split instantly into 2 loud camps. One side expressed concern for Raphinha's fitness, pointing out how crucial he has become in recent tactical setups. Messages poured in wishing him a quick recovery, with fans emphasizing that no player should ever be pushed too far during a demanding season. But the other side focused entirely on the emotional reaction from Carlo Ancelotti, arguing that the manager's visible frustration signaled deeper issues inside the squad. Football pundits quickly jumped into the debate. Several analysts on sports talk shows suggested that the coach's reaction wasn't just about one player's injury, but about accumulated pressure, inconsistent squad availability, and a growing sense of unpredictability in key matches. Some even claimed that the moment exposed a lack of depth in certain attacking roles, forcing senior figures to rely too heavily on a handful of players. Former professionals added even more fuel to the discussion. A few ex-internationals sympathized with Ancelotti, stating that such reactions are common when a manager feels the rhythm of a season slipping out of control. Others, however, criticized the emotional outburst, arguing that public frustration could damage morale inside the dressing room at a crucial stage of competition. Inside fan communities and forums, speculation exploded. Threads were filled with theories about training intensity, medical decisions, and whether Raphinha had been rushed back too quickly in previous matches. Nothing was confirmed, but that didn't stop thousands of posts from circulating detailed breakdowns of past games, trying to pinpoint when things first started going wrong. Meanwhile, rival supporters took a different tone entirely. Some used the situation to question tactical decisions, while others saw it as a sign of instability in a squad that was once considered balanced and controlled. Memes, clips, and slowed-down footage of the incident dominated timelines, turning a serious sporting moment into a global talking point within hours. Even inside the club's broader ecosystem, whispers reportedly began circulating about behind-the-scenes tension. Though no official statements were made, the intensity of public reaction made it impossible to ignore how quickly narratives can shift after a single emotional moment. By the end of the day, one thing was clear: this wasn't just about an injury anymore. It had become a full-scale conversation about pressure, leadership, squad fragility, and the emotional weight carried by top-level football. And as the discussions grew louder, everyone waited for the next development, because in situations like this, silence never lasts long. What looked like a straightforward injury setback quickly spiraled into something far more complicated when new information started leaking from inside the club. At first, it was subtle. Small hints from journalists suggesting that Raphinha's condition wasn't as routine as initially described. But within hours, those hints turned into something much harder to ignore. A senior training staff source, speaking off-record, allegedly suggested that the issue wasn't purely physical. According to these whispers, there had been discomfort building for days, but the decision to keep him involved in high-intensity drills had been pushed forward due to competitive pressure. That single detail changed everything. Suddenly, what fans believed was an unfortunate injury began to look like a preventable situation. Then came the moment that completely shifted the narrative. A short, unverified clip surfaced online showing Ancelotti in a closed-door exchange near the training ground exit. His tone wasn't just frustrated, it was sharp, controlled, and unusually direct. While the audio wasn't fully clear, viewers claimed they heard phrases suggesting disagreement over medical clearance and risk assessment. Within minutes, the clip went viral, even before anyone could confirm its authenticity. But the real shock came later in the evening. Week about not feeling 100% ready, yet was still encouraged to continue training at full intensity. This detail, if true, reframed the entire situation in a way nobody expected. It wasn't just an injury story anymore. It was turning into a story about internal decision-making, trust, and pressure at the highest level. Fans reacted instantly, and the mood shifted dramatically. Sympathy turned into suspicion. Support turned into questions. And the manager, who earlier in the day was simply seen as emotional, was now being viewed through a far more complex lens. Was his frustration a reaction to the injury itself, or to something happening behind closed doors that had finally boiled over? As speculation reached its peak, one final development dropped like a bombshell. A trusted insider account claimed that an emergency internal review had quietly been initiated to examine the training load management over the past several weeks. No official confirmation followed, but the timing of the claim was enough to send social media into overdrive. Suddenly, everyone was asking the same question. Was this an isolated incident, or the symptom of a much bigger structural issue inside the squad's preparation system? And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't escalate further, a final detail emerged that froze the entire conversation in its tracks. Reports suggesting that Raphinha's next medical update might not be released as planned, and could instead be delayed due to ongoing reassessment. No explanation. No clarity. Just silence. Now the football world is left staring at a growing gap between what is being said publicly and what might actually be happening behind the scenes. And with no official answers yet, the tension is only building. Because the biggest question isn't about what happened on the pitch anymore. It's about what hasn't been revealed yet, and who is going to speak first. Everything has now built up to a point where silence is no longer an option. The story is no longer just about an injury, a training decision, or a frustrated reaction on the sidelines. It has turned into something much bigger, something the football world is now watching very closely, waiting for answers that still haven't arrived. Fans are already demanding clarity. Not just about Raphinha's condition, but about how this situation was handled from the very beginning. Was this simply bad timing, or were there warning signs that went ignored? Every new rumor has only added more pressure, and every hour without an official update has made speculation even louder. Inside the club, all eyes are now on the next statement. Players are expected to remain focused, but it's impossible to ignore how quickly the mood has shifted. Training ground energy, media attention, and supporter expectations are all colliding at once. One decision, one announcement, or even one misinterpreted quote could change the entire direction of the narrative again. And that's exactly why everyone is now waiting for the next move. Will the medical team finally release a clear and detailed update? Will the manager address the growing tension directly? Or will the club choose to stay silent a little longer, hoping the noise dies down on its own? At this stage, every option carries consequences, and every delay only increases the pressure. Meanwhile, fans continue to dissect every frame, every comment, and every possible clue. The conversation isn't slowing down, it's expanding. And as more voices join in, the situation becomes harder to control, not easier. What happens next will define how this entire moment is remembered. A clarification could settle things quickly, but another vague update, or worse, continued silence, could push the story into an entirely new level of scrutiny. For now, the football world is holding its breath, waiting for the next official word. Because this isn't over yet, and the next update might change everything again.